How do you do? Jen and Cam feel it would be unkind to present this program without a friendly word of warning. We are about to unfold our true crime podcast, a podcast of lifelong friends who seek to examine crimes which were committed without reckoning upon God. The discussion will be frank, and the subject matter will be of a grim and violent nature. I think it will thrill you. It might even horrify you. So, if there are young children listening, or if you feel unwilling to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Well, hello there, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How about yourself?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day here. It's just beautiful, like 70 degrees, sunny.
It's been raining all week and
not humid.
Tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 90s.
So we go 93 this week. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? That's like
welcome to Missouri, where it's 54
where you
one
need
week and it goes up to 93
in the morning and t-shirt in the afternoon.
It's all good. I'm ready for summer. Let's go. Let's rock it.
Okay. You ready to hear my story?
Oh, yeah.
It's
that too?
Something.
It always is.
Here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Today we are headed to the outskirts of Dallas, Texas, to a seedy area known as Oak Cliff, where income is low and crime is high. It's around 1990, and gangs, drugs, and sex workers frequent the area. Crack was big, and people would do almost anything to get it, including sell themselves for just enough money to get a hit of crack, and then the cycle would repeat itself. At this time, Dallas was having a murder problem of about 2 murders per day, and it was listed as one of the most dangerous cities in America. Officer Regina Smith is on duty on December 13th, 1990, when a call comes in pertaining to a body. It was a sex worker by the name of Mary Pratt, a 33-year-old Oak Cliff native. Her body was found on a street laid out for all the world to see, her shirt pulled up above her breast and nothing else below. A .44 caliber bullet wound in her head, her face and chest were badly bruised, indicating she took quite a beating prior to death. A neighbor who saw her was horrified and ran into the home to actually get a sheet to cover her up before police would arrive. I thought that was kind of nice because, I think the shock would be... Ooh. It was obvious the killer was proud of his work and he wanted everyone to see. Police were sure she had been killed elsewhere and then dropped off at this location. Dr. Elizabeth Peacock would perform the autopsy. At first, it seemed like the countless others that she had done over the years. She was a drug-addicted sex worker with track marks to prove it. But then she noticed something strange indeed. When she was documenting her eye color, they take measurements and all that stuff of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So she was getting ready to write down her eye color. She was left stunned. Both of Mary's eyes had been removed. They had been removed, but with such precision that you wouldn't even notice that she was missing her eyes until you would actually pop the eyelids open. A rape kit was performed, but no semen was located. Some strange fibers were collected off her body, but other than that, there was nothing else. No witnesses, no clues, and with Mary being a sex worker, the pool of possible suspects, was huge. The investigation would remain at a standstill, that is, until the killer would strike again 2 months later. 27-year-old Susan Peterson, an Oak Cliff sex worker, was found much like the first victim. Her blouse was pulled up over her breast, naked from the waist down. Her legs were parted as if on display. She was shot in the head 3 times with a .44 caliber gun, and an empty condom package was found near her body. While it seemed that these 2 murders could be related, one detail left no doubt. Just like Mary, Susan's eyes had been removed. There was a serial killer preying on the ladies of the night.
They're the most common group of people preyed upon.
Mm-hmm.
So, homeless and sex workers. So that tracks.
Detective John Westphalen, along with his partner, Detective Stan McNear, were put on the case. They contacted the FBI with the hopes of finding a list of killers who committed their crimes with violent mutilations. They came up empty, unable to find a person who precisely, almost surgically, removed women's eyeballs. Since this was new to them, the FBI created a criminal profile. The profile would reveal the killer, or would reveal that they believed, let's clear that up, would believe that the killer would be a white male in his mid-30s, a sexual sadist who basically hated all women. They believed he was smart, educated, with a possible background in the sciences. They believed he would be well-liked by his friends, and in addition to this, the way the killer displayed their bodies on the side of the road was his way of proudly showing his trophy. And finally, he was not done. He would strike again. Investigators put up flyers in the neighborhood to not only warn potential victims, but to let the killer know that they're onto him. They, of course, did not let out the key detail of the missing eyes. They didn't want the public to know or, to panic them. Well, that is what they wanted, until a police officer leaked that the killer was on the loose who killed with facial mutilation. Mm-hmm. That detail set the case on fire. It was everywhere. Media went crazy. Of course they do. They always do. The Dallas eyeball killer was now known. The media, they love that kind of stuff. They love to get the monikers and all that stuff. But it also really scared the sex workers and the local community.
As it should. Seriously. I'd be petrified. And I know you would.
Oh, hello? I'm a chicken. I'm okay with it.
Yes, you are.
I know. It's a good thing. Not as near as bad as I used to be, but still. Okay, here we go. Police decide to set up sort of a sting operation, so they send some officers in posing as sex workers to try to lure in the man. But it failed. Nobody took the bait. So instead, officers started running license plates at all the seedy hotels and still nothing. They get a break from a sex worker named Veronica Rodriguez. Veronica contacted police and said that she and Mary Pratt, and Mary was the first one that was murdered, entertained, shall we say, a man who she believed was the killer. The man was a middle-aged guy with gray and black hair who drove a white truck. Veronica told them that the man took them out in a field where the three did their thing, and as Veronica was getting dressed, Mary and the man got into an argument. As they were fighting, the man took out a gun and shot Mary in the head, right then and there. Veronica, scared for her life, made a run for it, and she made it across the field to a house where she was able to get in. The man living in the house was a man by the name of Axton Schindler. The man told Veronica, hey, I know the man that's attacking the sex workers.
What?
He told her that. However, there's a problem with Veronica. We're going to get to that. Police reach out to him, and he denied having ever said that. So, okay, maybe he just said that. Maybe Veronica, and here we go. Maybe Veronica didn't really hear that right. The problem is Veronica was a lifelong drug addict whose brain and body had suffered great damage due to this fact. She was wise in the ways of the street, and because of this, she would often lie to get what she wanted. Authorities weren't sure if what they were hearing from Veronica was true or not. She would often be seen by police officers who'd pull over, and her, she would talk nonsense. I guess you could say her brain was pretty much fried. So they didn't know if they really believed that this whole transaction happened or not. So they were kind of at a standstill with that. On March 10th, 1991, the killer struck again, but this time he was much more brazen. 41-year-old Shirley Williams' bloodied, naked body was found right outside a local elementary school. And let me just say, when I was looking through the newspaper, I was not prepared for the photo that they included. Like a color photo. I was like, is that real? Yes, it was real.
It was a bit graphic. Is
Very.
That what you're saying?
She's totally naked, but just like kind of laying on her side next to a curb on the road. It was just bizarre. Much like the other victims, her eyeballs were missing. However, this time, that surgical precision that the killer had used earlier was absent. It was as if either she moved when he was trying to remove the eyes, or he was in a hurry, a frenzied attack. They didn't know why. But just like the other two, no semen was left behind, and again, an empty condom placed next to her body. Pubic hair was collected from her body at that point, not knowing whose it was. Now, Shirley worked as a maid during the day, but due to her crack cocaine addiction, She had started working as a sex worker at night. Now, Shirley was different than the other two victims in that she was black and the other two victims were white. Now, we all know this because we listen to podcasts and watch too much true crime TV, but usually killers don't jump over to the other race. They usually kill, their victims are usually the same race as they are.
They kill within their race. Yes, that's true. I've always been told or listened to. Yeah.
Listened to. This was really shocking, not only to police, but to the sex workers working on the street. You know, the ladies, the women believed that if they were Latino or black, they were safe because the killer was preying on white women. Well, this changed everything. Authorities were almost positive that this man visited many of the sex workers on a regular basis. He was someone they knew and they trusted. But Dallas, as we know, is a large city with a lot of potential suspects. Police hit the streets to talk to as many sex workers as they can. One such interview is a 17-year-old Brenda White. Now, Brenda would tell officers that one night she got into a truck with a man. Now, Brenda wanted to do her usual thing, which was to go to this seedy motel that they all used. And the man did not. He was like, no, I'm not going to go to a hotel. I just want to stay and drive around. And she was, no, I don't want to do that. Well, this made the man extremely angry, and he started to choke Brenda. He started to literally choke her. Brenda began fighting back and was able to get into her purse and mace the man. She, thankfully, escaped. The description she would give to police sounded oh so familiar. Middle-aged white man with salt and pepper hair, driving a white truck. Now, this was the same description that Veronica Rodriguez had given officers. With this new information, police reached back out to the man named Axton Schindler. Now, remember, he was the one who was in the house that Veronica ran to in the middle of the night, across that field, when Mary was killed. They thought maybe he knew more about this. Remember, previously, he had told her, well, he allegedly had told her he knew who was doing this, but then he denied it to police. Police think, you know what, we need to take a better look at him. So they do a background check on Swindler, and they learn that he does not have a record. He's clean. But his driver's license address is not the address of where he's currently living. They learned that the address listed on his license belongs to Charles Albright and his father, Fred Albright. It was listed in their names. The information that I got following this, because I want to make no doubt, I obtained it from Texas Monthly, and it's from an article entitled See No Evil by one of my favorite writers, Skip Hollandsworth. He often writes for Vanity Fair. He's one of my favorites. So he actually sat down and talked to Charles, and it really is a great article. It's a great read, and I'll put it in the description if you want to check it out. I smushed a lot of it together. There's much, much, much more, and I think I only pulled one quote from it that Charles gave Skip, but there's many more, so check it out. That will be down below in your, in
the
sources.
show notes.
There you go, show notes. Charles Albright was born in Amarillo, Texas in 1933, where he was put into an orphanage. He didn't have to stay long, as he was adopted by a loving couple named Dell and Fred Albright at just 3 weeks old. Dell was a school teacher, and she was very protective and a very strict mom, and she adored Charles, doting on him and making sure that she was raising a polite, educated young man. She worked with him on his academics and made sure he would be extremely bright. Due to this, Charles would actually skip 2 grades while in school and ended up graduating high school at age, I believe it's 15, 16, right there. According to the article, quote, when Charles was a small child, she occasionally put him in a little girl's dress and gave him a doll to hold. 2 or 3 times a day, she would change his clothes to keep the dirt off of him. Afraid that he might touch dog feces or get polio, she took him to Parkland Hospital to see the polio patients locked up in the huge iron lungs. End quote. A little bizarre.
Kind of, yeah.
Putting a little fear in him, but
that's a lot of fear, I would think.
I would think so, too.
Those iron lungs are serious business.
It was also his mother who introduced him to his lifelong passion, taxidermy. When he was a child, she enrolled him in, do you remember when we were younger? I don't even think they have these things, but it used to crack me up. Learn how to draw. And you could take like these, what do you call it? Correspondence courses, right?
Yeah, you would find them in the back of magazines.
Mm-hmm.
If you could draw Tippy the Turtle, you might be perfect for our art classes. Right. Yeah.
So when he was a child, she enrolled him in a class to learn the trade of taxidermy. Young Charles started with dead birds that he would find, and his mother would actually sit with him. And, he was pretty young at this time. I think he was 10 or 11, something like that. So his mom would help him use the tools, and, she would instill in him, you have to be so careful. The cut has to be just perfect, not too deep because you could ruin the carcass, then you can't stuff it, etc. Charles would spend hours perfecting the little animals. He learned how to do it so well, but there was always something missing, something he wanted so badly, but his mother would not let him have them as they were too expensive. Their eyes. He desperately wanted to get the glass eyes that were sold for that purpose, the purpose of taxidermy, but his mom would not allow it. Instead, his mother would fashion some sort of an eye for the animals out of her sewing kit. Sometimes it was a button eye, sometimes it was a little sewn circle eye. It was something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But this was not the kind of eye that he wanted. He wanted these animals to be more lifelike.
Well, if you're going through all that trouble
just stuff them. I don't know how much glass eyes are, but they can't be that much, I don't think. Maybe he's doing a couple a day. I don't know.
Well, it depends on I guess, how much money they could, I don't want to say waste on it, but,
invest in it.
Yes.
There you go.
If they didn't have a lot of money, that would probably be something on that really don't need list.
Mm-hmm.
But sewing an eye on a, let's say, sparrow to make it look real wouldn't be very gratifying, I guess.
Seeing the little button eyes up there would make me sad. I think that's
like
even
Coraline.
Creepier. Yeah, that's creepier than having the real eyes. At age 13, Charles started getting into a little trouble. He broke into a local church, and he'd break into small stores, little convenience stores or whatever, and help himself to whatever caught his eye, such as, a shiny watch. Ooh, shiny. I'm going to take that. Now, at this point, it wasn't huge trouble, but trouble nonetheless. At age 15, he was arrested for aggravated assault. He was also 15 years old when he graduated from high school and then enrolled in North Texas University. At 16 and a freshman in college, once again, he was arrested with some stolen cash, a rifle, and 2 handguns. Now, this is all going to sound a little familiar. Charles and some friends decided to become a teenage burglary ring. But Charles would deny that and say, you know what? I wasn't involved. I was simply holding items for friends. That's the familiar part, because that's what all kids say.
I was just holding it.
This would land him in jail for a stint. And this, of course, threw off his college plans just for a little bit. When he was released a year later from jail, Charles applied to Arkansas State Teachers College. Now, this wouldn't work out too well either because he was expelled when he was found in possession of some stolen items. He would not be prosecuted because I think they were embarrassed, to tell you the truth. But instead, he was adamant. He was going to continue on and get that degree he so desperately wanted. Good for him. And by that, I mean, he's going to forge some paperwork to give himself not only a bachelor's degree, but a master's degree as well.
Wow. Well, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it.
Might as well get it all
do
out. He should have just kept going and got a doctorate. But hey, whatever. Once he secured a teaching position, he married his girlfriend, Betty Hester, and they would have a daughter together. Now, neither the teaching career nor the marriage would last. Charles began forging checks, and when the school found out, he was fired. This would give him a nice little probation sentence, and he and his wife would separate and eventually divorce. Now, Charles was an extremely intelligent man. He spoke multiple languages. He really was very smart. His mom worked with him. He was one of those people who just seemed to worm his way into things, and once people liked him, he'd stay. For instance, this made me laugh. For instance, Charles had a friend who was working at a beauty salon, and Charles decided, you know what? I want to be a beauty operator. So he went and got his beauty operator license, and then he talked himself into a job when he had no experience. And Mr. Charles, which is what the clients called him, would spend lots of time with his clients making sure their hair was just perfect. Lady clients, of course. But that kind of cracked me up because he's like, professor, beauty operator, taxidermist,
Just a jack of all trade.
He's a Renaissance man is what he is, Jen. Charles was always a small-time crook, forging checks, stealing, that kind of thing. Things that would get you maybe a little probation or a small stint in jail. That all changed on March 25th, 1985, when Charles stood before a judge and confessed to knowingly and intentionally engaging in deviant sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 14. He was 51 years old, by the way, at this time. Now, Charles would still claim that he never touched that little girl. They were all mistaken. They're all wrong. They all have the story wrong.
And of course.
Charles had met the family at his local church, where he was very active. Charles was in the choir, and he first met the family in 1979. He would often visit the family at their home, having dinner, and he even went one year dressed up as Santa to deliver presents to the children at their home, at this little girl's home. Even after his courtroom admission, he would claim he never did what he was accused of. However, this was not the petty stuff he had always been doing. This, as we know, was much more serious. The veneer was beginning to crack, Jen. In 1985 in Arkansas, Charles met a woman by the name of Dixie Austin. Now, the two would fall quickly for each other, and Dixie would call him a calm, kind man who was always very gentle with her. Charles, she would claim, would never cheat on her. Charles once again worms his way into her life quickly. He moves in with her, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to leave you with all the bills. You're going to pay for everything. I'm just going to sit here and work around the house. Tinker, do some carpentry work, fix some flooring, things like that around the house. However, after this went on for a while, Charles needed, let's rewind that. After this went on for a while, Charles decided he needed to bring some extra money in. That wasn't really the reason, though. So he decided to rent out a property that was given to him after his dad passed. One such renter was a truck driver by the name of Axton Schwindler. This is the guy at the top of the story. It was about this time that Charles would bring Dixie back to Dallas to live. Charles would take on a part-time job, again, wanting to bring in some money, delivering newspapers, Jen, overnight. So he was helping. Oh, wait, no. He took that job so he could visit sex workers without Dixie knowing, right? So he could get out of the house at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and go visit sex workers, and she would think he's delivering his newspapers, which he was, but he
just would take detours and little stop-offs, and his lunch was,
Yep, exactly. Now,
so technically, he wasn't lying.
No, he wasn't, and he's,
killing 2 sex workers with 1 stone, maybe? Is that how that works? 2 birds, 1 stone?
3.
Well, what I meant was...
I know what you mean.
He was working, bringing in money, but he was also...
Yeah. Charles was well known to the sex workers working. With some, he had specific dates, always having the ladies perform the exact same acts with him. I'm not going to get too graphic, but you can use your imagination. With others, he'd simply pick them up and take them out to get something to eat. Maybe go get a burger at McDonald's, go get a little fish sandwich at Long John Silver's, whatever, and then drop them back off, just making sure they had something to eat. Those he would never have sex with. They simply were he was doing something nice for them. The ladies knew him, and they thought him to be a good guy. In fact, I think they called him a good old trick, I think, is what they called him specifically. But as time went on, his demeanor changed. Many of the women would say that they refused to see him anymore as he was becoming aggressive. He wanted to be handcuffed, he wanted to be hit, things like that. they just said no. Out on the streets, the sex workers at first felt that the killer was only targeting white women, like I had mentioned above. So those of color felt safe. That is until the killer's third victim, Shirley Williams. Now, Shirley was black, and after her murder, the shady Star Hotel, that's where they took all their fellas, or people, I guess, was empty. Right now, all the sex workers were scared. They knew this killer was out there, and he was after any of them. Nobody was safe.
I couldn't imagine how the terror they must have felt.
Seriously. And desperate. They're desperate for money. And from all accounts, this guy seemed normal.
Well, if you look at him, he looks normal. But what is normal,
educated,
right?
And, talk about your dual life, like by day and by night. The other thing was that this killer had messed up on Shirley. He had been so careful to cut out and remove those eyes with medical precision. But this time with Shirley, it was either that he was in a hurry or he was in a frenzy and he was not near as careful. In fact, the blade, the very tip of the X-Acto knife had broken off and the tip remained in the skin near her eyes. Not to be too graphic here again, and I left this out, but I'm just going to tell you, I guess there's all these tendons, ligaments, I don't know what they're called, because I'm a podcaster and an English teacher, not a medical person, but it's really hard to get the eyeball out whole, and then I guess the optic nerve is really tough. It's tough to cut. So that's why they were so surprised with the first two, how he had taken out their eyes so clean.
He probably would have needed a lot of time and a safe place to do so.
But with a sex worker, you get that because you're paying them for their time. Everything changed when the authority...
I think once you take their eyes out, you don't have to pay anymore. That's just me, but whatever.
That sounds like Dennis Rader, because he would pay whatever he wanted because he knew he was going to get it back anyway. No, Gary Ridgway. Sorry, Gary Ridgway would be like, you want $150? Sure, here. Because he knew he was going to get it back. What a jerk. It's weird the facts that stick in your head, you know what I mean?
Jerks, okay.
Then the authorities meet somebody named Brenda White, who tells them about a story about a man who attacked her. The officers knew they needed to take another, longer look into the story to make sure it's true, and when they did, it led straight to Charles Albright. What officers did is they laid out some photos of people, one of them being Charles Albright, to Brenda White, and they said, hey, we need you to point out the person that attacked you. Without hesitation, bam, Charles Albright. Okay. They don't really have anything else on him right now. They don't have a lot of evidence. His name just keeps coming up. And with one street worker pointing him out, they need more. So they take these photos to basically the street corner where Veronica was known to frequent. Veronica Rodriguez, the one with the damaged brain. And they are hoping that she will point out the same man. However, Veronica, she wasn't as quick to do so. She was scared to death. She was afraid the man was going to come back and get her. She was,
reasonable. I mean, that's a reasonable fear.
So she refused to point him out. Officers come back empty-handed. And, their boss was like, yeah, I don't think so. You go get her and you bring her back in here to the police station. So they drag her into the police station and she refuses, again, to point out the man who attacked her, scared. So they talk to her and they give her the details about her 3 friends that had been murdered by this man, the gruesome things that he did, and they reminded her, he's not going to stop. He's not going to stop until they stop him. Well, that worked, and she did point out a man without hesitation, and that man was Charles Albright. It was in the wee morning hours of March 22nd, 1991, when officers broke into the home of Charles Albright to arrest him on 3 counts of murder. Charles, of course, would deny everything. He denied knowing the women. He denied any involvement. Police searched his home, and they found a lot of tools, X-Acto blades, things like that, but not anything that would indicate... We all have X-Acto blades. Am I wrong? I mean, most people do. If you own a home, you have one. But most notably, no eyeballs. They never found any trace of eyeballs or anything that would lead them to believe that he had kept the eyeballs in his home. At this point, authorities are pretty unsure if they can even win the case. They still needed more. Prosecutor Toby Shook was going to try something unique, and that would be hair evidence. It seems that Charles's hair and pubic hair matched that which was found on one of the women who were killed. In addition to that, hair samples taken from a blanket that he kept in the back of his truck matched that of Mary Pratt and Susan Peterson. The defense would claim Charles Albright was not the killer, and it was more likely Axton Schindler, the renter of one of his houses, or at the very least that Axton had been the killer and Charles maybe helped him. Police would not find any hair evidence matching Axton's, nor would any of the witnesses point out Axton over Charles when they were shown their photos. On December 19th, 1991, the jury returned. Charles Albright was found guilty of murder of Shirley Williams. He would receive a life sentence. Charles would claim, quote, this was the quote he gave to Skip, "Oh, really? I have never touched an eyeball. I truly think, and this may sound far-fetched, that the boys in the forensic lab cut out those eyes. I think the police said, we want some sort of mutilation." End quote.
Oh, yeah, that's blame it on the MEs. That's nice.
So Charles Albright was incarcerated in the John Montford Psychiatric Unit in Lubbock, Texas, and died on August 22nd, 2020, at the age of 87. Now, this is stuff that I didn't put in there because I couldn't really... One was from the article, one was from a different article, and it's just things that I thought were interesting. So
okay.
The weird thing about the eyes, just two little bizarre stories. When Charles was in college, his roommate broke up with his girlfriend. She was said to be like one of the prettiest girls on campus. After the breakup, the man, of course, devastated, threw out all the photos of his old girlfriend. Charles went in and snapped up those photos and just waited for the perfect time to bring those photos back out. The time would be several weeks later when his roommate had started dating a new girl and moved on with his life. His roommate is, laying in his bed, and all of a sudden he looks up at the ceiling and, what's that on my ceiling? Yeah, Charles had cut out the eyes of all the photos that his roommate had thrown away, and he had placed them randomly around the dorm room. So, there was a couple on the ceiling, there were some on, a lamp, there was some in the bathroom above the toilet. The eyes, itty-bitty eyes.
Yeah,
now,
that's odd.
Thank you. Charles would say that it was all a joke, it was just a prank, it was funny, college kid prank stuff. But still a little bizarre.
It's odd. It's very odd behavior, yes.
Another one is that Charles, again, he was a Renaissance man, right? He was commissioned by a man to paint a picture of the man's wife. He worked on it for months, slaving away. So finally the husband's like, listen, it's been months. I want to see this picture. He demanded to see the painting. Once he saw it, it was beautiful, with such great attention to detail. Her dress, her face, her hair. Just one thing missing. Well, two, to be exact. The painting, it had just white spots on the canvas for eyes. Charles never painted the eye area, claiming he just never could get it right. Saying, eyes are really hard to paint. Which, he's not wrong. They are hard to paint, to make realistic. But again, a little bizarre. So that's the story of Charles Albright, who was known as the Dallas Eyeball Killer, the Eyeball Slasher, the Dallas Slasher. He's got a few names. But very interesting with the fixation on the eyes, taking the taxidermy. Yeah. And I guess by all accounts, I read a story that he, like I said, all his friends really liked him. He was on a softball team, for older guys, right? And he was really good on the team and admired by them. And one day, jokingly, his teammates were teasing him. And I guess a car full of women passed by. And they made a comment about the women that were, excuse the term, but this is what they said, whores. And Charles made a comment and he said, I would kill them all if I had the chance. Well, they're just laughing and they're thinking, you're joking, right? We need, and this is what I thought was totally ridiculous. We need whores so that men don't cheat on their wives with married women. Say what? Oh. Okay. But Charles was like, no, if I had the chance, I would kill them all. And some of his friends were like, oh, he was not joking. He had a little love-hate. I guess he had told those guys, which I don't believe is true, that his mother was a sex worker, a prostitute, is what he said. But the one that gave him away, his birth mother, not the one that adopted him, because she was a school teacher. But by all accounts, she was not a sex worker. She was just really young, and then I think went on to have a normal life, by all accounts. So for some reason, he had a
He was just messed up.
He was, but he would date women, and by all accounts, very sweet to them, very nice to them. And then some of the sex workers, like I said, he'd buy him, a Happy Meal from McDonald's or whatever. And then just bizarro. That's my story of Charles Albright.
He's very interesting. I remember there is a Criminal Minds episode, and I looked it up real quick, and it's season 5, episode 6, and it's called Eyes Have It, or The Eyes Have It. And it's basically based on Charles Albright.
There's quite a few out there.
And they go into the whole, I believe, if I remember right, about the taxidermy and all that kind of stuff. It's very blatantly Charles Albright.
Oh, if you listen to this podcast at all, you know that I find a lot of these cases from watching TV, and then I go down some wormhole. But I think it was a Forensic Files. So there's a Forensics Files on him too. So I started watching the YouTube thing when I should have been doing other stuff, but why would I do anything else when I can just watch TV? Anyway, I was watching it, and I got halfway through, and then I had to do something else, right? So I get up, go do whatever. So the next day I'm like, ooh, I'm going to finish that episode, see what's up with Charles. Canceled. It got canceled, and I was like, what? So in my head, I could not find that episode. So in my head, it's just like it stopped in the middle, which I hate. It drives me crazy. So that's when
Forensic Files episode was taken off.
Yeah, it was on YouTube. So like whoever had posted that got their account revoked
because it was a violation.
Yeah, or something. But
you can find it. It's somewhere.
I tried.
Out there.
There's a ton on Amazon. I went season by season, Jen. And you know how many seasons of Forensic Files? It's the longest running true crime show out there, I do believe.
Yeah, you can find it. It's somewhere. I'll look for it and I can send it to you because
I got the end of the story, but I was just still kind of like, wait, what? So it would have, so.
Interesting.
But I always think, because that's always such a serial killer book kind of, fiction book that they cut their eyes out. So I tried to look up John Douglas and Roy Hazelwood. What's his name? I tried to look up stuff and I couldn't really find anything that said analysis of why a killer would cut out eyes, because you always think typically that it's because they see you or you don't want them to see you. So it has something to do with that, but I couldn't. If anybody out there listening found something, let me know, because I would be interested in that. It's just,
Well, you would think if anybody had said anything about that or knew that, it would always be on everything about Charles Albright. So
maybe it is. Maybe I missed it, but
Or they didn't want him to technically see him using a sex worker. Who knows? I don't know. I barely would know why I do things, much less anybody else.
I got you. So that is
yeah, he's pretty creepy as far as serial killers go.
Leading a one life by day and something else by night, and I think he was pretty educated. Like he seemed to be.
A lot of them are, it seems,
smart. So yeah,
all right. Awesome.
I got 2 more days with my seniors, Jen.
Woo, that's exciting.
Then I have 2.5 weeks with nothing. That I just have to report to school, clean my room, and probably research killers, like what I do every day. I always wonder if they ever looked at my school computer. Now, I do teach that crime class, so that's my excuse. However, if they ever looked at my school computer, guarantee I'd make the news. Let's just say that.
Oh, never mind.
Well,
I was going to say, get a little bit political, but
when I'm researching, and this is how it's come, and it's not proud of it. So say I would plug in Charles A. Now that should go to everybody, right? For instance, and it'll immediately Charles Albright, serial killer. Like it knows that I'm looking up killers. It's kind of embarrassing. Makes my searches fast because
it does, because it's always right there.
It's right there.
No, I don't really have a lot more to add, to be
all right
honest.
Okay.
My little mourning doves have flown the nest. Aww. And I've learned this, that the dad is the one that sits on the eggs during the day. The mom sits on the eggs during the night.
Get out.
Dad is back sitting on the nest. They can have up to 3 broods, I guess, a year. Dad's sitting back on the nest. So I'm wondering if we're going to have another set. So,
so mom shops during the day and then dad shops at night. Is that
Dad,
what we're
Dad
saying?
goes to work at night. He's got night shift and mom's got day shift.
Not that I want to get into this, but it is amazing to me sometimes that animals are such better parents than humans. I mean, truly. No. Just saying. Just put that out there for Mother's Day. And Happy Mother's Day to everybody that has children or fur babies or scaled babies or anything else, any sort of thing that they love. There you go.
Just happy Sunday it is Sunday. It'll be Happy Wednesday when this comes out.
But yes.
Happy Wednesday to everyone.
All right, Jen, and I heard we have a little promo.
We do have a promo. It's from our friend Jenny from Murder Up North. Jenny is one of the sweetest women. I love her with all my heart.
Wow. Nobody gives us accolades like that. I love Cam and Jen with all my heart.
Seriously, Jenny is one of the nicest podcasters that I've ever met. She does UK. So it's all up in the northern part of the UK. All of her murders take place there. Or not her murder. She doesn't murder people. But Jenny is wonderful. And I was just talking to her and I'm like, I was thinking about just sending my girls to college in the UK. And she's like, well, I'll take care of them. And she's a doll. I love her.
You could not send your kids over there. You would miss them too much unless you moved over there with them. There's no way.
I might go over there. I actually did tell my youngest daughter and she's like, but I wouldn't get to see you very often. And I'm like, believe me, when you're 18, you don't want to see me very much anyway. So
I don't know. My daughter's still pretty attached to me.
Well, as of right now, mine are too. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is Jenny is so sweet and she's so kind and all that pours out of her soul into her podcast.
Which is called, again?
It's Murder Up North. And she's just a phenomenal woman. And I would seriously...
marry her.
I probably would, yeah. Okay. I don't know why not. Seriously, go subscribe and listen to her. She's amazing, and I'm not going to lie.
Oh, that's so
I like her a lot.
Until next time, remember, lock your doors.
And keep passing by those open windows.
Bye-bye.
Love ya.
Today's episode was researched and written by me, Cam. For more information about this episode, as well as all the sources I used, please check out our show notes or the podcast website at ourtruecrimepodcast.com. Our True Crime Podcast is developed and created by hosts Jen and Cam. Original music and audio mix of all our True Crime Podcast episodes is courtesy of Nico Vertesi from We Talk of Dreams. Listener discretion is provided by Edward October from October Pod VHS. Our True Crime Podcast is executive produced by Nico Vertesi and Dick Vane. Make sure to like and subscribe to Our True Crime Podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. We can be reached on Instagram and Facebook at Our True Crime Podcast or on Twitter at Our True Crime Pod. You can email us at ourtruecrimepodcast@gmail.com. If you really like the show, make sure to check out our Patreon at Our True Crime Podcast. Our True Crime Podcast is an OTC production.
Hi, I'm Jenny, the host of It's Murder Up North. If you're curious about the murderous north of England, this podcast is for you. I've lived in various parts of the north of England. I went to college in the shadow of Saddleworth Moor, where Myra Hindley and Ian Brady buried those 4 innocent children in the 1960s. I've worked in the city of Leeds, where the Yorkshire Ripper targeted his victims in the 1970s. Knowing how geographically close I've been to these infamous crimes made me curious, and that curiosity became It's Murder Up North. So join me as I delve into the cases both infamous and obscure, but always with the aim to help you see the person, not the victim.
The other thing was that the killer had messed up on Shirley, as he had been oh so careful to
cut. Do you want to say killer again because you said Keller?
I know. I'm sorry. I need some elocution. Elocution.
I get what you're saying, but
I know. That's why. Thank God. Maybe we just say and and ooh, that's awful. But at least we correct each other, and that's what I did think about too.
We try to. Yeah.
Could you imagine? Okay, let's say that again.